Mike, I do want to understand a little bit more about like what are the key differences between working at a company like a big tech company like Google and then transitioning into essentially like more contract or consulting work. I think that that's probably a big gap to bridge, probably more so for you than, for example, for Glebe, who's been consulting for the last almost 10 years, probably more than that, right?
Yep.
And so I'm wondering what like the bottlenecks were for you, or like what the biggest struggle adapting to that work might have been.
Yeah, so it actually is surprisingly different. Like I guess I thought it would be similar, like I was doing software engineering and data science at Google. I was like, oh, I'll just do that for other clients. But things are very different, right? At Google, there's a lot of like things move a lot slower, but they're also designed to constantly scale and constantly be open to just massive growth. So if you want to build a small feature for something, you would actually be thinking about like, okay, we have 1,000 users now, but I need to design it in such a way that it might have 10,000 or 100,000 or a million later. And so even at the beginning, you have to design it away, which means the build process is very long, right? Even small features take incredibly long amounts of time. And this makes sense at Google, right? Because you want things to be able to ship to the whole world very literally. But sometimes that can get a little bit frustrating, right? Because it takes so long to get an MVP out. Or the fact that like maybe things pivot and the project gets killed before it gets launched. Obviously, this doesn't always happen, but that can happen at Google. And it's very different at consulting firm because instead we come into a client and we're like, we understand their needs. I mean, lots of conversation, figuring out what their needs are, coming to terms on what they are. And then it's like, okay, how fast can we make an MVP? Can we do it in 2 weeks, 3 weeks? Can we do it before we even sign this deal to give them a sense of what's to come? And like that pace was very different and I liked it, but there was this kind of weird thing where like at Google, I just got so inculcated in that everything needs to be designed to scale. The level of quality of all of our reviews, like, I was taught to essentially like comment on people's comments in code. So if you had a typo or grammatical error, like that should be fixed before it can submit this code. Like if you say a word and it's slightly ambiguous in your comment, that should be fixed before it can commit this code. And so the standards were incredibly high, but that's because like there was some code I wrote that's like executed 10 billion times a day, like as part of Google search engine, and it's executed on every single search and instant search and autocomplete and all of that. And so it actually took a while for me to kind of transition to like, how do we still have the same high standards, but move faster? Like, how do we actually realize that like, okay, if this is design only works for, 1,000 customers, like maybe that's a fine place to start. And maybe we want to fully finish this and then we'll come back, if it's incredibly successful and then redevelop it for 100,000 or a million if that's what the client needs. But spending all the time in the beginning to develop it for a million customers is not the right way to consult. So I would say that was actually surprisingly the biggest challenge for me because I just did not expect it to come up as a challenge at all. I was like, yeah, we'll just build something faster. It's fine. But then I realized, no, it's really this like balance. But I ended up growing to love it. Like I love the fact that we can build MVPs and like throw stuff together super fast and just see it live super fast.